You swim like you're drowning in slow motion, honey. Maybe spend less time in the pool and more time finding a real job. Some of us aren't built for this. Coach Darren Phelps said it loud enough for the entire natatorium to hear. 22 swimmers on the deck. Every one of them went still. Simone Okafor-Baptiste did not turn around. She was still in the water, both hands on the gutter, her goggles pushed up on her forehead, her lungs still burning from the 200-meter set shed she had fished. She pressed her palms flat against the tile lip of the pool and breathed once, slowly, the way her grandmother had taught her to breathe. When white men said things they expected to go unanswered, then she pulled herself out of the water without using the ladder, the way she always did, the way she always did, the way she had done since she was 9 years old in the public pool. 3 blocks from the apartment where her mother shared a fold-out couch, because the complex did not have a room with a proper bed for 2 people on a laundry supervisor's salary. She picked up her towel. She did not look at Phelps. She walked to the far end of the bench and sat down and began pulling off her cap. Behind the observation window on the second level, a woman named Dr. Patricia Rowe had stopped writing on her clipboard. Patricia Rowe was 51 years old, the former head of aquatics development at USA Swimming, and she had driven 4 hours from Indianapolis that morning because one of her former athletes had called her the night before and said, very quietly, "Pat, I need you to come see something." She had not asked what. She knew the tone. She watched Simone walk to the end of the bench. She watched Phelps go back to his clipboard as if nothing had happened. She watched the other swimmers drift back to their lanes like water filling a hole. Then she looked down at the time on the screen mounted beside the observation window. The automatic timing system at Westbrook Aquatic Center was accurate to 1/100th of a second. The 200-meter individual medley. The screen still showed it, 1:53:41. Patricia Rowe had been in this sport for 30 years. She had coached 2 Olympic finalists. She had sat in the stands at Athens and Beijing and London. She knew exactly what 1:53:41 meant for a 23-year-old woman in a mid-level training facility in South Bend, Indiana. It meant the world record was 1:52:10. It meant that Simone Okafor-Baptiste, daughter of a laundry supervisor, training at a facility that shared its lane space with a Tuesday water aerobics class for senior citizens, had just swum the second fastest 200 individual medley in the history of the event, and her coach had just told her she swam like she was drowning. Patricia did not go down to the deck immediately. She sat with both hands on the railing and watched the number on the screen, the way you watch a thing you're not sure is real. Then she took out her phone and called the only person she trusted to tell her she wasn't losing her mind. Marcus Webb, USA Swimming Director of Athlete Development. 12 years working together. He answered on the second ring. "Pat, what's wrong?" "Nothing's wrong. I need you to pull up the current national rankings for the 200 IM Women's Open." "Hold on." The sound of a keyboard. "Okay. Number 1 is Audrey Fish, 1:53:88. "Why?" Patricia looked at the screen. "Because the woman I'm looking at just went 1:53:41 in a warm-up set." The line went quiet. "Pat, hand-timed?" "Automatic. Westbrook system." "I'm looking at the board right now. That's..." Another pause. "Who is she?" "Her name is Simone Okafor-Baptiste. She is 23 years old. She is not in your rankings, Marcus." "She is not in any rankings." "That's not possible." "I know. Pat, if she went 1:53:41 in a warm-up, in a shared training facility." "I know what it means. What are you going to do?" She watched Simone through the glass. The young woman was sitting alone at the end of the bench now, retaping her left thumb with athletic tape, not looking at anyone. Her jaw set at an angle Patricia had seen before. She had seen it in the athletes who had been told, too many times by too many people, that the distance between where they were and where they wanted to be was not a gap but a wall. "I'm going to go introduce myself," Patricia said. She found Simone in the parking lot 40 minutes later, just as she was unlocking a 2009 Honda Civic with a cracked taillight and a USA Swimming sticker on the rear window. that was old enough to be peeling, at one corner. Simone had changed into street clothes. She had a duffel bag over one shoulder and earbuds in. And when Patricia said her name, she turned with her keys already out in front of her, the way a woman learns to hold her keys in a parking lot when she has been walking home alone for most of her life. She took one earbud out. Dr. Patricia Rowe. She held out her hand. I was watching your set from the observation deck. Simone shook her hand. She did not smile. A lot of people watch sets. She turned back to her car. Patricia said, I saw 15341 on the board. Simone's hand stopped on the door handle. She did not turn around immediately. She stood there for one full second with her hand on the chrome handle and her back to Patricia, and Patricia let the silence be what it was. Then Simone turned around. That timer's been wrong before, she said. Phelps says it runs fast. Patricia looked at her evenly. I've been in this sport for 30 years. That timer is not running fast. Simone looked at her for a long time. Then she looked at the pavement between them. Ms. Rowe, Dr. Rowe, but Pat is fine, Dr. Rowe. Simone looked up. I have heard things like this before. A scout at state, a man at the invitational, who asked for my phone number and then asked for something else. I have learned to be careful about people who find me in parking lots. That's a fair thing to say. So I'm going to ask you once. What do you want? Patricia did not reach for a business card. She did not reach for anything. She stood with her hands at her sides and said, I want to know if you want to swim. I already swim. I mean for real. Simone's eyes did not change, but something behind them did. The way a door shifts in its frame without opening. Phelps would never let me. Phelps, Patricia said, is not your coach as of tomorrow morning if you decide you want a real one. Simone said nothing for a long time. The parking lot was emptying around them. A minivan pulled out. A teenager on a skateboard went past on the sidewalk and they both watched him go. How did you find me? Simone asked finally. Your former age group coach called me. Nadia Morrison. She said she'd been trying to get someone to watch you for 2 years. Something moved across Simone's face. She looked away, then she looked back. Nadia doesn't even coach anymore. No, Patricia said, she doesn't, but she called me anyway. The drive back to the apartment on Linwood Avenue took 11 minutes. Simone did not call her mother from the car. She sat at the red light on Calvert Street with both hands on the wheel and the radio off and stared at the name on the business card she had put in the cup holder. Dr. Patricia Rowe, USA Swimming, Development Director. She had been swimming since she was 7 years old. Her mother, Glenora Okafor Baptiste, had taken her to the city pool that first summer not because she wanted an athlete, but because she worked 12-hour shifts at a commercial Vorse launch facility and needed somewhere safe for Simone to be. The city pool was $1.50 a session for children under 12. Glenora had left exact change in a Ziploc bag on the kitchen table every Tuesday and Thursday morning for 6 years. Until Simone turned 13. And the age group club at Westbrook held open tryouts and took her on a scholarship. Because the head coach at the time, a man named Arthur Kessler, had stood at the edge of the pool and watched a 13-year-old girl swim 100 freestyle and had looked at his stopwatch and then looked at it again. Kessler had retired 3 years ago. Phelps had come up from Nashville. The scholarship still paid Simone's monthly training fees, but nothing else. The gear she bought secondhand. The goggles she repaired with electrical tape. The early morning sessions she drove herself to at 4:45 a.m. in a car that sometimes did not start on the first try in January. Her mother worked the day shift. She had worked the day shift for 22 years. Simone pulled into the lot beside their building, sat in the car for a moment, and went inside. Glenora was at the kitchen table with her reading glasses on and a stack of mail in front of her, sorting the things that required attention from the things that could wait. She had the particular still quality of a woman who has been managing emergencies so long that she has learned to triage before opening an envelope. She looked up when Simone came in. Then she looked again, because she could see it, the way mothers see things daughters do not announce. What happened? Simone set her bag down. She put the business card on the table between them. Glenora looked at it without touching it. "A woman watched your practice?" "She was in the observation deck. She saw the timer." "What did the timer say?" Simone sat down across from her. 1:53:41. The refrigerator hummed. Outside, a bus went past and the windows fogged for a second with diesel. Glenora was quiet for a moment. Then, "Simone." "That's the—" "I know what it is, Mom." Her mother picked up the business card. She read the front. She set it down. "Did she ask for anything?" "No." "Did she say what she wanted?" "She said she wanted to know if I wanted to swim for real." Glenora folded her reading glasses and held them in both hands. She looked at her daughter the way she had been looking at her since Simone was 7 years old, standing at the edge of a city pool in a borrowed swimsuit, 2 sizes too big, refusing to be afraid of the deep end. "Baby," she said, "I need you to tell me something and I need you to answer me honestly." "Okay. Have you been not going for it? In practice? Have you been holding back?" The question landed in a particular way because it was specific, not general, the way Glenora's questions always were, because she had spent 22 years listening to things people were not quite saying. Simone looked at the table. Phelps cut 2 girls from the travel roster last spring for going faster than his anchor relay swimmer in a training set. Glenora said nothing. "He doesn't post times. He doesn't send results to the Federation. He told me 6 months ago that I had hit my ceiling and I should be thinking about coaching if I wanted to stay in the sport." Glenora unfolded her glasses and put them back on the way she did when she needed to see something clearly. "And today you forgot to hold back." Simone pressed her thumbnail into the edge of the table. The set was supposed to be a descending pace. "I got angry on the back 50. I stopped thinking." Thus, her mother looked at her for a long time. Then she reached across the table and covered Simone's hand with hers. Her hand was dry and warm and heavier than it used to be. "Call her," Glenora said. "Too tight." Simone called Patricia Rowe from the apartment landline because her cell plan had a dead zone on the south side of the building, and she was not going to stand in the parking lot for this conversation. Patricia answered on the first ring as if she had been waiting, which she had. They spoke for 22 minutes. At the end of the conversation, Simone the conversation at the IU natatorium in Indianapolis for the following Monday at 7 a.m. and a second number to call if Westbrook tried to block her transfer of affiliation. She did not tell Phelps herself. She emailed the Westbrook athletic coordinator and copied USA Swimming's athlete services department the way Patricia had told her to, because doing it out loud, in person, gave a man like Phelps the opportunity to make it into a scene, and Simone was done performing for him. The email went out at 11:17 p.m. on a Tuesday. By 7 a.m. Wednesday, Phelps had forwarded it to the Westbrook board with a note that described Simone as emotionally volatile and resistant to coaching structure. By 9 a.m., Patricia Rowe had sent her own email to the board that included a screenshot of the timing board from the previous afternoon and a single line. "I would be careful, gentlemen, about the story you want attached to this athlete's name." The board did not respond. The IU natatorium had 8 50-meter lanes, a fully automated timing system calibrated to international standards, and not a single senior citizen in a flowered cap doing backstroke during the 7:00 a.m. session. Simone stood on the deck in her training suit with her goggle strap in her hand and looked at the water the way you look at something you have wanted for a long time and are only now allowing yourself to want. Patricia stood beside her. She did not make a speech, she said. "Walk me through your butterfly pull." They worked for 4 hours. Patricia said again 47 times. She said good once on the 39th repeat of the breakout drill, and she said it quietly, the way a person says a thing they mean. On the drive back to South Bend that evening, Simone sat in traffic on I-65 and let herself feel the thing she had been carefully not feeling for 3 years. Not hope, exactly. Something harder than hope. Something that did not need to be named to be real. The story traveled the way things travel in a community where everyone knows the weight of being passed over. Nadia Morrison, the retired age group coach, who had made the phone call, posted nothing publicly. But she told 2 people, who told 4, who told the kind of people who email beat reporters at regional sports desks. The item ran on the Indianapolis Stars athletics blog 6 weeks later. South Bend, swimmer, training under former U.S. National Development Director, posts times drawing attention from Olympic pipeline coaches. It did not mention Darren Phelps by name. It mentioned Westbrook Aquatic Center. It mentioned that Simone had been unaffiliated with any national program until recently. It mentioned her mother worked in commercial laundry. By the time the article was 3 days old, a journalist from ESPNW had called Patricia's office. Phelps called the Westbrook board again. The board called their attorney. The attorney advised them that a 23-year-old black woman with a documented time of 1:53.41, who had been told by their employed coach that she was not built for the sport, was not a narrative they wanted audited. The board voted to post training times publicly going forward. They did not announce why. The U.S. Open in Indianapolis that spring drew 400 swimmers. Simone had been training with Patricia for 3 months. She entered the 200 IM as an unaffiliated developmental athlete, which meant she was listed in the heat sheets at the very end in a preliminary heat with 2 16-year-olds and a 27-year-old. Club swimmer from Akron, who had been chasing a qualifying time for 6 years. In the locker room beforehand, the favorite in the event, a 25-year-old named Audrey Fish from Stanford, sat 2 benches down and scrolled through her phone and did not look up. Her warm-up suit was the national team issue. Her goggles had a custom strap with her initials on it. Patricia knelt in front of Simone and adjusted her goggle seal without being asked. "You've never raced at this level on a certified course." "No. The water is colder than the IU facility. Your turns are going to feel faster. Don't think. Just push." "Yes, Simone." Patricia looked at her. Audrey Fish has been in this program since she was 11. She has sponsors and a coaching staff of 4 and a training facility that costs more per month than your mother earns in a year. When the gun goes off, none of that is in the water. Simone nodded. "Go swim." She did. The preliminary heat went unremarkable at first. She touched the wall of the 3rd length, just behind the 27-year-old from Akron. Then she turned. The butterfly, which had always been her weakest stroke of the 4, was not her weakest stroke anymore. 47 repetitions of the same breakout drill, done on a 50-meter course, done until the motion was not a thought but a fact about her body. She came off the back wall of the butterfly. 50 and the Akron swimmer was half a body behind her. One of the 16-year-olds had stopped at the wall to clear her goggles. The scoreboard showed Simone's split at 55.2 for the first 100. Which was the kind of number that makes coaches in the stands put down their coffee. She finished the breaststroke in 31.4. She turned into the freestyle clean, no hesitation. She did not look at the other lanes. She did not need to. She touched the wall. 1:53.8. The natatorium did not go silent. It went strange. The sound shifted the way sound shifts when 300 people process a number simultaneously and are not sure they read it right. Patricia stood at the end of the lane with both hands on the railing and did not move. Audrey Fish, who had been seated on a folding chair near the start end preparing for her heat, stood up. She looked at the board. Then she looked at lane 6. Then she looked back at the board. She did not say anything. She sat back down. But she did not pick her phone back up. Simone stood in the water with her hands on the gutter and looked at her split times on the scoreboard. She was breathing hard. The natatorium was making a sound she did not recognize because she had never heard a crowd react to her before. Not really. Not like that. She pulled her goggles down to her neck and looked for Patricia. Patricia was already at the end of the lane, one hand extended. She helped her out of the water. She handed her the towel. She did not speak immediately. Then she said very quietly, "That's a new American record in the heats." Simone stopped toweling her hair. "The final is tomorrow morning," Patricia said. "Eat well tonight. Sleep. Simone looked at the board once more. 153. She looked away. She looked at the floor. She found her sandals and put them on. Did Nadia see? She asked. Nadia is in the stands, Patricia said. Section C. She was here before I was. Simone didn't smile, but she let something shift in her shoulders. A millimeter, a fraction of a tension she had been holding since she was 13 years old and first understood that the gap between where she was and where she was allowed to be was not random. She had been running this particular race for a decade before she ever stepped onto a certified course. She was done running it alone. The final the next morning was 8 women. Lane 4, Simone Okafor-Baptiste, unaffiliated. Lane 5, Audrey Fish, USA Swimming National Team. Glenora Okafor-Baptiste sat in the family section in the 3rd row. She had driven from South Bend at 5 a.m. Her shift started at 2 p.m. She had asked her supervisor 3 weeks ago to move her break, and her supervisor, who had worked beside Glenora for 11 years, had said yes without asking why. She sat with her hands in her lap and her reading glasses in her coat pocket, because there was nothing to read, only something to watch. The gun went off. Simone came out of the water on her butterfly with her hips higher than she'd ever positioned them on a race start. Something Patricia had spent 6 sessions adjusting by centimeters until it felt natural. By the first wall, she was even with Audrey. By the second wall, she was half a stroke ahead. The breaststroke was where she had always lost time. The breaststroke was where, in practice, and in every informal time trial she had ever swum, something cautious in her would engage, some mechanism that had learned, over years of being managed and ceilinged and told she was difficult, to pull back at the moment that mattered. At the breaststroke turn, Audrey pulled even. At the 30-meter mark of breaststroke, Audrey had a body length. In the stands, Glenora pressed both palms flat on her thighs. Simone turned into the freestyle behind, not by much, but behind. At the 75-meter mark, the crowd was on its feet because Audrey had begun to tighten, the way even the best swimmers tighten in the final 25 meters. When the lactate is above the threshold, their training accounts for, and Simone had done something. Audrey had not. She had spent 3 months learning to run on pain the way a woman learns to run on pain, when the only facility she can afford to train in is open until 9 p.m. and she works a part-time shift at a hotel front desk until 8:45. At the 80-meter mark they were even. At 90 meters, Simone was ahead by an arm. At 100 meters, Simone hit the wall. The board blinked once. 1:52:08, a world record by 0.02 of a second. The natatorium made a sound. Simone did not hear clearly, because she was underwater, and by the time she surfaced and turned to find the board, the crowd was already what it was, and it took her a full 3 seconds to find the number through her fogged goggle lens. She looked at the number. Then she put her forehead down on the lane line. She stayed there for a moment, just one. Audrey Fish finished 0.2 behind. She pushed her goggles up and floated on her back and looked at the ceiling for several seconds. Then she rolled onto her front and swam down the lane to where Simone was still holding the rope. She said, "I've been chasing that record for 4 years." Simone looked at her. "Good," Audrey said. "Good." And she pushed off the wall and swam back the other way, and the tone in her voice when she said, it was the tone of someone who is relieved to have finally found what they were looking for, even if it meant losing. Patricia found Simone in the warm-down pool 5 minutes later. She did not bring a speech. She sat down on the pool deck beside her and put her feet in the water, and for a while they sat together and said nothing while the scoreboard in the main pool was still lit. "Call your mother," Patricia said eventually. "She was in the stands." "I know." "Call her anyway." In the 3rd row of the family section, Glenora Okafor-Baptiste had not stood up the way the crowd had. She had stayed in her seat. She had 2 fingers pressed to her lips. When she saw her daughter look up at the scoreboard and put her forehead on the lane line, she closed her eyes. Once. Briefly. The way you close your eyes when something you have been holding on to for a very long time finally rests. Then she opened them and waited for her daughter to look up. Darren Phelps was not at the meet. He was in South Bend, running a Saturday morning practice at Westbrook where 3 of his swimmers were in the middle of a 500-meter set. He did not find out until one of them stopped at the wall and said, "Coach, look at this," and showed him his phone. Phelps looked at the screen. He read the name. He read the time. He handed the phone back. He told his swimmers to finish the set. Then he walked to the far end of the deck and stood there for a long time, looking at the water. He did not say anything else for the rest of the practice. 2 months later, Simone Okafor-Baptiste stood at the starting block in Paris in Lane 5 of the women's 200 individual medley Olympic final. In a suit the national team had provided after she qualified on the same day, Phelps officially resigned from Westbrook. A coincidence nobody pretended was a coincidence. Her mother was in the family section. She had made the trip because Patricia Rowe had made 3 phone calls, and because Nadia Morrison had quietly organized a fundraiser that raised enough to cover the flight and the hotel, and a gray cardigan Glenora had bought at the airport shop. Because Paris in July was cooler than she had expected. Before the final, in the call room beneath the aquatic center, Simone sat on a folding chair and retaped her left thumb. It was a habit from years of dry land training, in a facility where the resistance equipment was old enough to be sharp at the edges. She had the tape now. Proper white athletic tape. A full roll, and she still only used 2 strips, the same amount she had cut by hand in parking lots and locker rooms for 7 years. She looked at her hands for a moment. Then she reached into her swim bag and pulled out a folded piece of paper, worn at the crease from being opened and refolded. She had written it herself on a Tuesday night 3 years ago, after a practice she had driven home from in silence. When she had sat at the kitchen table and tried to write down the only thing she actually knew to be true. It said, "You are not too much. You have been in the wrong room." She read it. She put it back in the bag. Patricia came in and stopped in front of her. She did not bring a clipboard. She put one hand on Simone's shoulder and said, "Go swim, baby." Simone went. She won by 0.4 of a second, 1:51.94, a world record that would stand for 6 years. She did not look at the scoreboard when she touched the wall. She turned in the water and looked up at the family section until she found her mother, which took 8 seconds. Because Glenora was not standing. She was sitting in her seat, 2 fingers pressed to her lips, looking back. Simone pressed 2 fingers to her own lips. They held it for a long time. In an office building in Nashville, Darren Phelps was in a job interview for a county recreation director position. The interviewer asked him to describe a moment when he recognized unexpected talent in a developing athlete. He cleared his throat. He said he had once worked with a very dedicated swimmer in South Bend. He did not say her name. He did not say the time. Nadia Morrison watched the race live from her living room in Columbus, with her 12-year-old daughter asleep on the couch beside her. And when the board lit up, and the crowd moved and Simone turned in the water to find her mother, Nadia put a hand over her mouth and kept it there until she was sure she would not wake the child. She had waited 4 years to make that phone call. She had made it at 11 at night from a parking lot outside a grocery store because the reception in her house was bad and she had not wanted to wait until morning. She had said, "Pat, I need you to come see something." She had not known if it would matter. It mattered. 1 year after the Paris Games, the Glenora Okafor-Baptiste Foundation held its first open water scholarship ceremony for young swimmers from under-resourced communities in the Great Lakes region. Simone served as the program director. Patricia Rowe chaired the board. Nadia Morrison ran the youth development curriculum. The first scholarship went to a 14-year-old girl from Flint, Michigan, who had been training in a 12-meter pool at a community center that was open only 3 days a week. She arrived at the ceremony in sneakers, with the sole beginning to separate at the left toe, and she looked at the pool at the IU natatorium the way Simone had looked at it 3 years earlier, like something she had wanted for a long time, and was only now allowing herself to want. Simone crouched down next to her at the edge of the pool, the same way Patricia had once crouched next to her and said, "You swim like you were made for this." And she meant it. She meant every syllable. Because somebody had once looked at her the same way. Not through a window from above, but at eye level, in a parking lot, in the low afternoon light of a Tuesday in October, and had said 4 words that changed the direction of everything. Do you want to swim? If you know the name of the person who crouched down to look at you when the room had already moved on, say their name tonight, out loud. In the comments. Tell them you remember, because somewhere right now a girl is in the wrong room. And the only thing standing between her and the water is whether one person decides to look.